Welcome to the weekend. Happy Labor Day weekend. I'm Jackie Alemany, along with Eugene Daniels and Laura Barone Lopez, who is in for Jonathan Capehart. We begin with the resistance to President Trump's plans to militarize Chicago and a possible looming showdown between the Trump administration and state and local officials. Late Saturday, President Trump doubled down on warnings to Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker, telling him to straighten out Chicago fast or possibly be subjected to a federal law enforcement takeover. In Chicago, Mayor Brandon Johnson signed an executive order Saturday demanding Trump stand down from his threats to deploy the National Guard.
We will protect our Constitution, we will protect our city, and we will protect our people. We do not want to see tanks in our streets. We do not want to see families ripped apart. We do not want grandmothers thrown into the back of unmarked vans. That's not who we are as a city.
It comes as the Trump administration prepares to surge manpower to Chicago in the coming days to step up immigration enforcement and arrests, with plans to use a naval base outside Chicago as a possible staging area. The mayor's order affirms that Chicago police will remain under local control and police will not collaborate with federal or military units in the city. Joining us now to discuss all of this, Daniel Coe, former White House Deputy Cabinet Secretary and host of the People's Cabinet podcast. Dan also once served as Chief of Staff to former Boston Mayor Marty Walsh. Also joining us is former Illinois Congressman Joe Walsh, who served as a Republican but is now a Democrat. Thanks for joining us this morning, guys. Dan, I want to get to you first as our local Boston boy at the table. Is this also coming to Boston? And as someone who used to deal with a lot with stakeholder management with local stakeholders, is what Brandon Johnson's saying the blueprint for other mayors who are potentially bracing for something like this?
I think what's so distressing about this is all about Donald Trump's theater just applied to crime and enforcement, right? He claims he's tough on crime. In his budget, he froze $800 million worth of law enforcement grants, including $150 million for things like community violence intervention programs. Why do I bring that up? Talk about Boston. So the way you measure homicide rates in cities is per 100,000 people. Jackson, Mississippi, 72. D.C. is 27. Boston is 3.5. How did they do that? They built trust with police, clergy, and elected officials. That trust, as everyone knows, is incredibly fragile. What Donald Trump is doing is just walking in there and blowing up that trust and will just walk away after 30 days. That makes everything more unsafe. The very programs that make communities safer, he is defunding while doing all this drama out front.
Joe, one of the things that's so interesting is that this is a president who is saying this is about crime. But at the same time, as Daniel just said, all the things that you would typically do when you care about crime and want crime to come down, he's not doing. Just throwing guns on the street is not how you're going to do it. But one of the, when you look at how the Chicago mayor is reacting, how Pritzker is reacting, how the lieutenant governor who was on our show yesterday is reacting, they are speaking as if, and our executive producer brought this up a lot this morning. We were talking before the show. They are talking as if an invading army is coming in to their city. It feels terrifying, I think, for everyone watching. Does that language help, I guess, residents get used to what's about to happen to them so they're prepared? What do you think?
No, I agree with that playbook. I agree with that messaging. And Dan's right. Democrats, these mayors, have to get on the freaking offensive. Yeah. This has nothing to do with crime. Nothing. And if it had to do with crime, it would be everything that Dan said that we should do. This is all about Trump. Look, Trump has an issue that Republicans have always felt is a strong issue for them because Democrats typically back down when we talk about the issue of crime. Democrats shouldn't. This has nothing to do with crime. It's about a midterm issue. Trump knows Republicans are in trouble. And I think also, guys, I think Democrats, we Democrats.
Yeah, you got to get used to that.
This is about Trump trying to normalize this image of troops on our streets for a lot of nefarious reasons.
It's also about immigration, though, right? Mm-hmm. It's not just about the potential midterm issue of crime. I want to play some of the sound from Mayor Brandon Johnson, where he's talking about every legal mechanism they are going to use to fight Trump's threats.
This sweeping executive order directs our Department of Law to pursue any and every legal mechanism to hold this administration accountable for violating the rights of Chicagoans. This order affirms that the Chicago Police Department will not collaborate with military personnel on police patrols or civil immigration enforcement. We will not have our police officers, who are working hard every single day to drive down crime, deputized to do traffic stops and checkpoints for the president.
Daniel, that's a key difference, I think, between what we're seeing in Washington, D.C. and what may happen in Chicago, which is that the president cannot take over the local police force. And the mayor there is saying, we are not going to assist in any kind of enforcement.
And we take a step back. First, Trump said, I'm doing this in D.C., I have control over it. People were Republicans saying, he's not going to spread it to other cities. Mm-hmm. Here we are, a week later. And it's just another testament to how psychologically conditioned we've become, right? Somehow we find it acceptable in society now that law enforcement are wearing full masks, tackling people in the streets with no clear identification in America, right? People were saying that people were being dramatic about Donald Trump coming back, and this is what's happening in our streets. What I'm hearing in Boston, too, is that people are walking around now with their papers in their pocket.
Yeah, it's happening in D.C.
I have Arab-American friends, I'm half Lebanese, who are walking around who are Melkite Catholic, who are walking around with a crucifix because they are afraid that ICE is going to racially target them for their faith. This is what's happening in our country right now. And so for all the people who said that Donald Trump wouldn't do these things, take a look in the mirror and turn on the TV, and it's exactly what he's doing.
Yeah, I mean, Dan, I think that's a really good segue to a really powerful interview and soundbite that we did yesterday with the Lieutenant Governor, Juliana Stratton, who really drove home that we cannot normalize using troops against citizens. Let's play that quickly.
What also cannot be normalized is that when good people, decent people who are affected by what they're seeing and are heartbroken by what they're seeing start to protest peacefully, of course, then the Trump administration wants to say, look, we have to come to the rescue and now federalize the National Guard and send troops against American citizens.
Joe, do you think that there is anything that can be done more effectively to actually deter Trump from continuing these invasions?
I think the more assertive and the more aggressive that local Democratic officials are, to this point, that we don't do this in America. We don't put troops on the streets in America. And to treat this as an invasion, if Democrats back down, local Democrats back down from being really strong and offensive on this issue, Trump's just going to steamroll this thing through 3 or 4 more cities, blue cities, before the midterm.
I mean, he did this in L.A. He sent the Marines to Los Angeles, right? Like, we went past National Guard. He sent the Marines to Los Angeles.
Who sat on their butts.
And didn't have much to do because the type of protesting that was happening was like 2 little blocks in Los Angeles. And so I guess these mayors have seen it happen. D.C.'s a little bit different, but he doesn't seem to care, right, Dan? Like, he doesn't seem to care that it's supposed to be different in a state where a governor is supposed to be in charge.
Here's a larger concern. I worked in intergovernmental affairs in the White House, and we went exhaustively to build relationships with local officials, because when a tragedy hits and inevitably something will happen, we're in the middle of hurricane season right now. Good, faithful coordination with local officials is everything in saving lives. My biggest concern, whether it be these things that we're seeing in Chicago, whether it be seeing the National Guard taken away from red states that are likely to get hit by hurricanes and hanging out in D.C., is when that hits.
Picking up trash now.
Exactly. And you combine that with FEMA, right? You've had that with his talk about defunding FEMA and all the attrition they have had. When a tragedy hits, this administration will not be ready. Their relationships with the local officials will pre-existingly be strained, and lives are going to be lost.
Well, Joe, it sounds like you think that this is something that is going to be playing out all the way up until the election day next year.
Oh, absolutely. Look, I believe part of what Donald Trump is doing is he wants there to be troops on the streets in certain cities before the midterms to prevent certain people from voting.
Which people?
Brown and black people in certain cities in this country. I have no doubt that's part of what Donald Trump is doing.
But
here.
legally, you cannot stop American citizens from voting.
Legally, you cannot, but you can sure. Donald Trump
the
sure
fear.
wants to
Intimidation
intimidate
tactics.
people from not to not vote. And I think Democrats need to speak to this.
Although it does feel like, at least just based on my preliminary survey of a bunch of the sanctuary city mayors, they've been conspicuously silent. And I wonder if that is a strategy because people don't want to get in Trump's crosshairs.
Exactly. There has been, and we've been talking to mayors for weeks now as Trump has talked about this. And what I've heard is there's a split. There are some like Brennan Johnson who want to get out front. There's some like the Baltimore mayor, Scott, who want to get out front. But there are others who are like, look, I don't want him looking at my city. He has said our names, so I'm not going to say anything. And this is a lot of black mayors who, for them, that's who he's been targeting also. These aren't just mayors in blue cities. These are black mayors. And so how they kind of ramp up and get on the offensive, as Joe was saying, is going to be vital to how this shapes.
I think one way to do it, though, is, as I mentioned before, with regard to the programs that are actually working. There's a program in Oakland called Youth Alive. They work at the bedside of people who have been involved in violence, youth. They treated 113 people last year. Only one committed violence again. That program had $2 million cut by Donald Trump. Right. So I don't buy the whole argument that like Democrats, I think Democrats lose if they say, don't worry, like the statistics say that the city is safe. I don't think that's a great argument. But if you're able to just clearly articulate, this is a program that's proven to work, that's proven to reduce violence, and we don't have, and they literally have said they don't know what to do now. Right. And so if you're able to clearly articulate why these programs are actually counter to what you want, I think that's an effective
And
strategy.
look, Eugene, we don't do this in America. And I sympathize with a lot of these black mayors who do not want to be in his crosshairs. But I'm sorry, this is unprecedented bullshit. And we all need to step up because we do not put troops on our streets in this country.
Joe Walsh with our first BS
I'm sorry.
this morning. It's 7:12. That's all right. It's Sunday.